I thought the dry docks were lives. Okay. I thought the dry docks were lives.
I forgot to unmute my mic. You know, that would probably... Yeah, that would... I forgot to have my mic muted when I was recording the first session of the... Oh, yes. So, for those who are on YouTube who are wondering, the first session of the Lebanon campaign has been recorded. I now need to get it edited. I now need to get some voice lines in from people for the opening. Well, opening, since I'm probably going to break it into 2 videos. And then... obviously need to do some editing and get some artwork commissioned. Like, you guys want a professional. This is my attempt to try and do professional, so it's not going to be an easy thing. Yes, questions are open, Gunnery Officer. You may fire when ready.
I might have got a correction from last week. So, as people file in. Because in hindsight, we made it sound like you do not bulge a battlecruiser, period. When HMS Renown is a prime example of fact you can bulge a battlecruiser when you rebuild them. You just can't do an American style bulging. Like with the standards, you have to do a very
well
stylized, conforming shape underneath.
You've got to do your water tank
to minimize friction.
You've got to do your water tank test. God damn it.
And specifically, we were taking the piss out of the bulging on the theoretical battlecruiser. I think it was the Washingtons.
Yeah.
Because they had an American-style bulge lip behind a turret.
Which wouldn't
have worked. So the bulge wasn't flush with the hull, which would have created a large amount of aquatic drag. Water resistance, that's it.
Okay, so we'll start with the YouTube question because we have no Patreon questions today.
Interesting.
1981. In the 1990s Adventures of Captain Pugwash, Episode 4, The Emperor's New Clothes, the Black Pig comes across a treasure ship belonging to the Emperor of China, heaped to the gunwales with priceless Chinese treasure. Just how lucky did Pugwash get to find this ship? The animation shows the treasure ship to be in the process of sinking. Who is Captain Pugwash? What era is it supposed to be set in? I don't...
Perhaps some Googling is advisable.
Okay. Okay, so from what I can see from imagery and okay, so from what I can see, it's well, okay. Well, there's one thing to answer this. The ship that he captains is a classic Age of Sail galleon, which therefore means for it to encounter a Chinese treasure ship would be a fundamental impossibility, given that those two ships are from are nearly 3 centuries apart from each other.
Not necessarily.
And I anyway, so we'll get to the typical gunnery officer's question now. Would you call the Spruance class as the ultimate and final iteration of the non-guided missile destroyers, since most destroyers after or prior to the Spruance are guided missile ships? Now, it's very important to bring something up here. Guided missile ship, the G designation in the US Navy, refers specifically and directly to ships that bring an area air warfare capability to the field. That means either Standard Missile 1 or Standard Missile 2. Or Terrier before that, or Talos. If you do not have that capability, as far as the US is concerned, you are not a guided missile combatant. Because that is specifically what the G in US naval parlance means. Hence why the Spruances are DDs, not DDGs. This does cause some confusion to people when they look at the Spruances and go, but they carry Sea Sparrow and Harpoon. And I go, yes. But that's not what the guided missile that parlance means in USN design. But yes, the Spruances are, by definition, the ultimate DD in US parlance, basically. They just flat out are. They're the largest ships to not carry area air defense capability in the US Navy. And because of that, they become the mounting points for Mark 41 VLS, which makes them the heaviest missile throw weight combatants in the US Navy once that is done. Ah, got it now. Okay, next question. In an Empire turned Commonwealth, who would probably have an Imperial reference? And realistically, how do you keep it into the 21st century? As we've said, Knight, and as I said in chat to you earlier, and I'll now extrapolate on the thing you just said as well, if there's World War II, they can't. Unless the Federation is fully formed up by World War II, and therefore it's not so much Imperial preference as it is a single unitary commerce and trade protection thing that the US is going to have to then enter as an external factor to the entirety of the empire, not just Britain, which is slightly different than the whole system of imperial preference, which was different than a unitary currency bloc, then maybe, but then that wouldn't be imperial preference. It would be what we would recognize as a modern customs and trade union, which is not the same as imperial preference. Given that the whole point of the Federation was to phase out imperial preference in favor of the preferred free trade angle that the British Empire was so fond of, in favor of a customs union that would be resistant to the aggressions of internal powers into it by the virtue of its size and heft. But if that system is not fully established by the outbreak of what we know as the Second World War, it doesn't survive. Because it cannot. If it's in place, the British could probably resist the US demanding its destruction. Like, they could offer them trade concessions instead. And, you know, key licenses to avoid certain tariffs within the market. But because it's not a preference system that can be dismantled wholesale very easily, which is a very flimsy system, it would be very difficult for the US to demand its complete obliteration. And the Empire, as it recovers after the war, would probably, Commonwealth, whatever, would probably be able to gradually leverage back some of the preferences and get-outs the US has granted during the Second World War. However, this is only on the thing that it is robustly locked in place before the outbreak of the Second World War, and has been so for about 10 years. If it isn't, the US can and will dismantle it. And it will never return. Probably killing the idea of the Federation.
It's worse than that. Because if World War II happens, the US, especially in the aftermath, if they don't get the concessions they want, or assuming that this is still intact, the Americans can, as was threatened in the Suez Crisis, quite easily shatter any customs union British Empire tries to make within itself.
Even if it's some sort of nebulous Commonwealth Federation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. It's called liquidating its British debt that's owned by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And crashing the currency. And in doing so, crashing the imperial economy. And that sort of economic crash, as what was threatened with Suez, would grind a mercantile economy to dust. Because you would basically cripple the flow of capital and goods around the empire.
Like,
Commonwealth.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. Even if this Commonwealth is stronger, even if the US debt is not quite as substantial, or its debt is not quite as substantial as it historically was, any form of global conflict on the scale that World War II was, like, World War I, for all its death and violence, was a very, in terms of the devastation it causes, was a very confined conflict, and did not wreak much on Britain or the Empire's infrastructure. Not so the Second World War. Arguably, the Empire could have survived a second European conflict like the Great War, one that's confined mostly to Europe and doesn't really affect Britain's infrastructure or the imperial holdings around the world. It couldn't survive the Second World War, where swathes of Britain itself were damaged and battered, where swathes of the Empire were battered and bruised, where full-on independence movements were funded by their opponents, causing irreparable damage to imperial unity. Go on, Foxo.
I mean, not even that. You've got the issue of debt. So, what allows them to recover from the debt after World War One falls predominantly on the Raj. And the fact that the banking system has the guarantee that there is material assets and human assets in India that will still produce a ludicrous amount of cheap goods. And there's going to be a lot of demands throughout the world for Indian goods and imperial processed goods. India's economy in the late 30s proceeds to collapse with the pre-shocks, what would go on to be known as the Bengal and North Indian famines.
Which was basically the Japanese's
Where...
fault.
No,
And the Germans' fault.
No.
Look, I'm sorry. Everyone gives Churchill stick for this, but I'm going to stand up and say, if there wasn't a war on, there wouldn't have been a famine. Because merchant shipping
It
would
would
have
have
been
still
able
been, they've just been able to respond to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the famine, specifically, one of the biggest causes of the famine was the fact that the agricultural output of India had been mismanaged for the past 30 years. And the introduction of nitrogen-based fertilizers had massively increased crop output. So a significantly larger proportion of land was assigned to cash crops. The then negatives of nitrogen-based fertilizers became apparent, and they went into a famine started, because a lot of the most productive regions of northern India weren't capable of producing the same amount of food as they had been in the previous decade.
Which is all well and good, and I will accept that. But I have to, it's fact. But
Yeah,
the point I'm making is
can I
that...
finish?
Yeah, go
Can I
on.
finish? The fact is, and then combine the fact with the horrific mismanagement of the British Indian railway network, and how massively underdeveloped it was for food distribution, as was seen in the 1920s. You get sort of this situation where the rail network can't support the amount of food that needs to be moved. The port infrastructure, and they're having to redistribute food from Burma, import food from Burma and Australia in the 30s to mitigate the effects of the famine caused by mismanagement, which was doable. Then the Japanese invade Malaysia and Burma and cut off that food supply. And the Australians aren't making enough food, and the South Africans aren't making enough food. The only place that's got the surplus they need and they go to is the Americans. But try getting that much food in 1941 through 3 from America to India. Because there's two very hostile navies in the way.
Again, like I keep saying it. Yes, the mismanagement was a problem, but, you know, if only certain powers hadn't started a fucking war.
Yeah, but if India had been administrated competently, there wouldn't have been the famine to begin with.
Well, yeah, but the blame for the deaths is on the Japanese and the Germans. The British had workarounds to fix the problem. But they couldn't use them because of the, you know, war. I'm sorry, Moe. Could the British have actually, you know, gotten around them if they'd have had access to the open seas? Yeah, they could have done. Why couldn't they do that? Like, had we been at peace and the famine still resulted in the deaths it had resulted in, then yeah, the British would be entirely to blame. But the only reason
Wait.
the deaths, what?
Wait, that's basically what she was saying.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that and this is why I brought up the railway specifically, southern India and Sri Lanka were producing a food surplus.
mm-hmm.
And that surplus would have been enough to mitigate the famine in Bengal and significant portions of the famine in northern India. It was because of the horrific mismanagement of the British Indian railway network. And the fact that the capacity that was funded to be built out wasn't built out. That when they lost access to the Bay of Bengal, when the Japanese were there and Japanese aircraft were there, that they didn't have the transport capacity to get the food there. When if it hadn't been a corrupt, mismanaged shithole of a railway network, there would have been enough capacity to alleviate the severe starvation risk, at least. So millions did die because of the colonial administration. And it's why you fucking fund your railways, damn shit.
Well, again, no, millions didn't die because of the well, no, because if they had, again, without the war, there wouldn't have been the need for that.
No, the underlying problem is the colonial management. The war exacerbated the issue.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but there were workarounds in place that, could have been used if there wasn't a war on.
Yeah. And there was workarounds if the colonial government wasn't corrupt as fuck and incompetent as fuck. Even in wartime could have been done.
But again, like I say, the underlying thing is, which you still haven't found an answer for, is that if there is no war, there is no death. Well, not no death, but less death.
You don't know that.
The British Indian Railway network is still going to fail, no matter what happens with that, with the amount of goods that needs to be transferred over land to alleviate it.
So that we can't know for certain. That's a good point.
Anyway, we'll go to the next question.
Yeah. Related to question 1. Would you call the Sprue Cans as flotilla or convoy leaders or for ASW task forces or cross-ocean convoys, respectively? Since the Spruance armament are limited to ASW and at best anti-service actions, not for defending carriers and service action groups. Those are both... The armaments of a Sprue Can make them ideal for being with the carriers and the service action groups. You still need ASW ships with carriers. And one of the things people miss about carrier operations is that normally you would have ships with box launchers with your carriers, specifically to yeet missiles at an opposing force you wanted to engage, primarily to attrit and degrade their air defense capability by forcing them to expend missiles at incomings, thereby opening up the way for a much more focused and, quite frankly, more accurate carrier strike that would follow to deliver the killing blow. And the Spruances were good ASW ships, which you also need in a carrier for task force. Convoy escort work in the Cold War was the work of frigates. Maybe with something like a Spruance as flag for escort work. But quite frankly, that's actually beneath a Spruance's pay grade. Flag for convoy escort would be a older destroyer. Preferably one with preferably an actual DDG. With area air defense capability. Yeah, an Adams class. Charles F. Adams class is a good example. Or an older, less capable CG. Or DLG, if depending on the era. What is the goofy... Sadu Otuni asks, what is the goofiest theoretical idea for a ship conversion that you've ever seen, which is actually someone just making up their fantasy ship? I mean, I think. So, theoretical idea for a ship conversion that is just someone making their own fictional ship and injecting it into reality. I suppose any of the hypothetical conversions of Vanguard into a CBG, sorry, a BBG.
Why would you say that?
Because all of them are completely fictional, and none of them have basically any basis in reality, and they're all just what people would want, rather than what would actually happen. Given that they're all aggressively overstating what would actually happen compared to what the RM would actually be prepared to fund. And they usually involve shit like ripping out gun turrets for Sea Dart and replacing the secondary battery with 4.5-inch guns and other madcap ideas. Very, very rarely are they measured enough to just go, well, they'd probably strap some box launchers for Exocet on her and call it quits. Maybe some sort of close-in weapon system. Maybe. If they're feeling particularly like spending a bit of money. That's the best.
Really wish Dragon was there for this one.
This question isn't exactly... a little bit more narrowing down would probably be preferable. Because...
Yeah, like I had to search for something I could actually think of to apply to the question, and that was the only thing I could think of that kind of made sense. Since it doesn't it doesn't cover all the things. Some people do have like ideas for missile conversions for Vanguard, and of course there are the actual RN plans.
Yeah, because Dragon could throw some of those up because he's actually got them.
Yeah. But usually, because most of the people don't know the RM plans for Vanguard's missile conversions, they go way overboard. And the reason
it involves Sea Slug. What they actually wanted to do. And nobody ever put Sea Slug on their proposed ship designs.
Exactly. Yeah. Now,
the weirdest one I found was a proposal for Tiger and Blake.
Okay.
Which was the Royal Navy converting them back to being gun air defense assets.
That's just not. That's not what the Royal Navy would. They already have their
replacing the 3-inch guns with phalanx and turning her into an Aegis combatant.
That's not who came up with this fucking madcap idea.
Hey, that. To be fair, that idea doesn't sound that ridiculous.
Considering that the Royal Navy has never, and even though they looked at it, will probably never operate Aegis. And if they had, and if they had, they wouldn't have fucking put it on those two ships.
If you think about it, you could apply this entire question to your Red Fleet timeline.
Yeah.
Honestly, well, yeah, I've never denied that the Red Fleet timeline is basically historical fiction. It's not old history. It's fiction. It's not history.
Oh yeah, speaking of Tiger and Blake, actually, I did also find one which was Tiger and Blake both get Albany style conversions to missile cruisers.
Again, why? The Royal Navy has its own fucking plans for missile ships. Who comes up with these madcap ideas? Why?
What, do you not like your Tiger class cruisers with with 4 Talos launchers with 8 arms?
That's not how. Anyway,
Oh, topic of Talos, I did also see one which was, what if you turned Iowa and New Jersey into missile combatants
which again,
in the
why?
1960s?
Why would you?
Fleet, would you change out a triple 16-inch turret for a twin Talos launcher?
No, for 2 reasons. One, if you're keeping the ship, the guns are more valuable because you have nothing else in the fleet that carries them. 2, you already have ships that are significantly smaller and significantly cheaper to run that have that fucking capability. Why do you need to spend this money to create this thing that has capability you already have?
Because your missile cruisers can't carry 4 different launcher and ammunition racks for the Talos.
No. Stop. Anyway. Typical gunnery officer, unless, Boba, you have a ship you can think of for this.
Nope.
Yeah. Typical gunnery officer. Opinions on the EC-121 Warning Star. Yeah, true, so do people who think they know everything actually know nothing. I believe the term is the Dunning-Kruger effect. I occasionally fall victim to it. I'm big enough to say that. I occasionally fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Luckily, I have my friends. Luckily, I have my friends to kick me out of it.
Right, okay. So, typical gunnery officers find one of the proposals for the 2 unfinished Iowas, but he's only found the one that's got this thing, the Talos launcher for an aft. It doesn't have the super firing Talos launcher.
No, he does. It has the one. The other one.
Does it? It's got 1 fore, 1 aft.
Look at the one above it. And then just apply that to the ship below.
Oh, yes, it does. Okay.
Also, again, why have the middle guns on the 16-inch been deleted? That makes no sense. And why is it carrying fucking Regulus? Again, makes no fucking sense. Anyway, moving on. Typical gunnery officer. Opinions on the EC-121 Warning Star. Do you think the EC-121 Warning Star was the best or most sophisticated AW aircraft prior to the introduction of the A50 and A3 Sentry? Do you think the Shackleton AW is either equal or better than the EC-121? I think the EC-121 is a better platform for airborne early warning than the Shackleton is. It's got more range, it cruises at a higher altitude, which is what you want for an airborne early warning platform. But it's also not the same thing as the later AWACS would come to be. Warning Star was very much a airborne early warning asset, AW. And also far more of a listening asset, electronic listening asset. It's worth noting that the US would divert, and also the Royal Air Force along with them, would divest these 2 airframes to different roles, getting aircraft like the rivet joint ELINT aircraft to do the listening, and the E3 to do the airborne, the AW, but also then, given the increased size of the airframe and the sophistication of electronics that was creating at the time, they could also do control of aircraft and other assets, so they became AWACS, airborne warning and control. But they were a symptom of their time. They were the first attempt in US service.
Shackleton should stay to being a maritime patrol aircraft.
Yeah, it really wasn't. It really wasn't built for that. It just didn't have the height, the speed, the range.
Just like it didn't have either of those to be a strategic bomber.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 1981. In an Atlantic fleet, Battle of the Denmark Strait with escorts, the A-class destroyer Antelope was sunk by 15-inch shell, with Hood, 1 County-class cruiser Norfolk, 1 E-class Echo, and 2 A-class destroyers Antony and Akates are all damaged, but both Eugen and Bismarck are sunk. What are the two sides' assessment? We went in with superior force and we won. Expected outcome achieved. For the British. The Germans. The British showed up with a superior force. We lost. Breaking out into the Atlantic is dangerous. I mean, there's not really much else to say from it other than that. I mean, Hood chalks up a capital ship kill. So
Making assumptions.
what do you mean making assumptions?
Well, it didn't say Bismarck was sunk by gunfire.
What else?
For all we know, it's a mass. It's just the escort decided to be funny and charging with torpedoes. Who knows? But that's what happened. The destroyer charged in. Bismarck couldn't balance between fighting Hood and avoiding the approaching destroyers and ate a bunch of torpedoes. Teehee, Bismarck sunk.
I suppose. Foxo?
Yeah?
Anything to add?
Oh no, we've got to put Hood in for a significant repair now.
Whoops.
Oh no, how about we do the refit now, given that she's already going to be out of action for a year?
Kill me.
Typical Gunner Officer asks, why did the US make the Sparrow missile as an active radar homing missile? Do you think they're limited with the technology at the time in making a mass-producible and reliable active radar homer beyond visual range missile? Well, first of all, the Sparrow, as it is mounted on US Navy shit... Oh. Okay. Well, first things first, Sparrow was the United States' first attempt at an air-to-air radar-guided missile. It was, I think, the first such missile in the West. I believe. With the British not adopting something similar until they adopted, well, Sparrow itself.
It wasn't the first developed, but it was the first to enter service.
Yeah, thank you, Fox. I knew there was something. I knew there was a phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
The French were playing around with that sort of stuff well before the Americans got the Sparrow into service. As much as I hate to credit the French.
Well, I mean,
very much,
about the Sparrow as we knew, or the beginning of the Sparrow program, because that's the timeline there is very different.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, the
Passive homing is always going to be easier to cram into a small form factor than active will be.
And especially if you've got aircraft with the radars to guide it, it makes sense, which the US did.
And on top of that, I mean, if you've got to add, say, a 4,000 watt radar set to an aircraft, 4 kilowatts off of an aircraft, or even 10K or more off of an aircraft's engine is not that much compared to the wattage that these engines are putting out. But you want to take that off of a rocket motor, or you want to put in batteries to sustain that, ooh, that missile got a lot heavier very quickly.
And it's not like they didn't try.
Also, I would like to wish the person that assigned me to a job 3 blocks away from the White House a very merry fuck you.
Fun.
I'm literally 3 blocks away from the White House
But yeah,
on
just
L Street.
there is a active radar seeker model of the Sparrow. They just can't get it to work.
Yeah.
What was the problem with early active homers? They like to find the ground.
No, it was basically
And
that.
then
It was basically that the with early active homers, it was basically that the radar wasn't big enough. It couldn't track, and the electronics weren't there to make sense of what it was seeing. It wasn't so much that they were tracking the ground; it was more the fact they couldn't track fucking anything.
Okay.
This is the sort of period where the reformers claim that your radar can't tell the difference between an airliner and a bomber was actually true.
Because, you know, they're both large aircraft with multiple engines.
Well,
And
no,
this
man,
is
they've both got a
really
massive
early.
protection.
Yeah.
And this is really, really early in airborne radar technology.
I mean, to be fair, nowadays, most radar can't tell the difference. It's the
Most radar
computer-
can.
No, you didn't let me finish. Most radar still can't tell the difference. It's the computers they're attached to that filter through information that they have on file and assign tracks to contacts, bearing in mind what they match up with in the database.
Oh, yeah. But when we say the radar can't tell the difference, what we mean is that the radar doesn't have a high enough resolution
Yes,
that
but
you can pick out the details to identify it. So if you got one plugged in one of these radars to you at modern computers somehow, it would still go,
what is?
that's a large airborne target. What the fuck do you want me to do?
Yes.
Simply, there is something there.
There's something there. It is large, and it is moving at this course and speed at this altitude.
That's
What
all
more
I
do you
know.
want?
That's all I know. Stop bugging me.
Well,
I
at
can't
this
tell you
era,
how
it
big
wouldn't
the
be able-
fuselage is because my receiver don't have enough.
At this era, it's
Yeah.
at this era, it's probably going to have difficulty telling you the heading and speed. You have to
Yeah.
manually calculate that based on the return pings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because we're talking 60s, aren't we?
Late 50s.
No, early mid.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting to the point where it can do it itself to a limited degree.
Yeah, they tried. It didn't.
Well,
it didn't. It didn't.
aircraft radar, yes, but the entire discussion is on missiles to begin with.
Yeah.
And not on the missile side of things.
That would never happen.
Yeah. And now to get you on. In that same Atlantic Fleet battle, the Hood took shells to the hits, causing stern flooding, hits the superstructure of the boat deck, starting a fire. At what hit would Hood be mission killed? To mission kill any ship of any size, you must do one of the following things, and ideally multiple. The ship should be unable to maneuver. The ship should be unable to train and fire its guns at you. The ship should be unable to signal other ships. Ideally, the only ones out of those that are really proper mission kills is the ship being unable to track and fire its armament at you. Because at that point, the ship cannot ship. At least not the ship cannot warship.
Oh.
And at that
Oh,
point,
where did she get hit?
she's not been mission killed. That's all. She's taken some flooding, some hits to the superstructure, and to the boat deck, starting a fire. If
Because,
not,
why is she flooding? Because there's one that might possibly mission kill her if it's a chase.
well, if it reduces her speed, that's not a mission kill. That just means that the opponent can escape. A mission kill is basically
Yeah.
where
Just can you my question? Can you tell us where she got hit? Done.
Whenever Knight gives a reply, I guess, basically.
Okay. Because if she's hit far enough down, then it's a possible mission kill because you can damage her rudder or shafts. And shaft damage is one of those. You're functionally mission killed because you can't effectively maneuver.
Which is what
And also, I would also flag that mission kill is going to vary mission to mission. Because, like, even if, let's say, Yamato during Tengo say it survives the big blue blanket, but it has limited headway and maneuverability. The goal for Yamato is just to beach on a advantageous stretch of sand so it can blow the landing forces to Kingdom Come. But if you take out Yamato's gunnery, it doesn't matter how well she maneuvers. That's a mission kill because they want her as a gunnery asset.
Technically, yeah. You could technically argue she's flooding and losing speed, therefore can't chase Bismarck. That's technically a mission kill.
Yeah. Caddy, what are you doing? Oh, please don't tell me it escalates. Oh.
Sidious, remember what you have to do in order to actually make it a question that I answer. You've forgotten something.
Oh,
Yes. Am I cutting out or is she cutting out?
She's cutting out.
Good,
Got
she's
it.
cutting out. That's not me.
You're not 90, Sidious. Yeah.
You're not nearly as good looking.
Anyway, Foxo, do you want to say it again, or can I move on to the next question?
move on. I'll DM.
Typical officer, would you call the USN Naval Tactical Data System as the first and most sophisticated computerized information system of the time, pre-Aegis for naval vessels, since it can take information from other US sensors and share or project the information to other ships? I would say so, yes. Given that there was, I don't think, any equivalent system in other navies for at least a couple of years, maybe even longer. I don't think certain navies ever got an equivalent system, at least not until well after the Cold War ended.
Let's see if I can make this without.
Well,
that's annoying.
Okay. Thank you,
I was
Knight.
hoping I didn't discuss the truck.
1981. If prior to Washington, the US is looking at an RN who have 14 15-inch armed battleships and 3 15-inch armed battle cruisers, because of the remaining QEs and 3 Rs with Renown and Repulse, switch for different names to allow for their historic battle cruisers. What poses more of a problem for the US, the RM with 17 15-inch armed capital ships, or whatever Agincourt actually was? The 17 15-inch armed capital ships, because you mentioned prior to Washington, there is no Washington! The Royal Navy has no need to kowtow to anyone else at this point.
I mean, honestly, they didn't really have a need to kowtow to. You realize Washington was heavily driven by budget and monetary considerations, right?
In particular, as Main Fox mentioned before, Washington happens in literally the perfect time period. It's why the Americans try and rush it. Because give Britain another year or two and Britain wouldn't have agreed to a Washington.
Yeah.
Because the economic situation would have recovered. Well, it's recovered enough that they would not feel it necessary to agree to said treaty. But
honestly, I do kind of question that if the various shipbuilding related unions in the UK at the time had gotten a little bit more aggro if it still would have happened.
Potentially not, but they don't have the power to push enough.
But I would also point out that there is another thing here that we have to think about. One of the other factors that led to the RN, well, basically allowed the government to bully the RN into agreeing to let them go to the table, or at least not having multiple members of the RN resign in protest, was the fact that they were able to point out that the United States had, in terms of modern battleships at least, caught the RN up. The 14 and 16s compared to the 15s.
I disagree on that. The USN
And-
has what? In terms of modern ships, you've basically got the Tennessees, which the Royal Navy considers an equivalent.
What
And
are
that's
you?
about
Colorado.
it.
What are you
Well,
talking
yeah, I guess once you get
about?
to the Colorado as well, then yes, but
I'm sorry, modern capital ships is basically Texas onwards.
no, because they're not comparable.
Texas is triple expansion, isn't she?
No,
That doesn't
they're
change.
fine.
It's coal-fired.
Well,
I mean,
she's still
yes.
coal-fired primarily, but
Ah,
is she a triple expansion?
That's
She
the
was
problem.
She's
considered
triple
a
expansion.
She is triple expansion. Okay, so then that is. Sorry, go on, Foxo.
yeah, because she was considered a equivalent to the early 13.5-inch ships,
Something like an Orion.
like an Orion.
I'd say she's superior.
Well, I would personally
mean-
take an Orion over Texas, but to what the Royal Navy considered, they
They're
considered
close.
her equivalent to an Orion or a. Oh, what was the one after them? It wasn't the Iron Dukes. There's one in between them.
King George V.
What, King
Was it
George?
King George V? Yeah, sort of more King George V equivalent. Which
I mean,
which to them isn't much.
all of the standards are easily slip into the modern battleship. They're all oil fired. They're all steam turbine driven. They've all got 14-inch guns arranged in a modern layout, and they've got the beginnings of
Correct,
what we,
right.
the
It was-
beginnings of what we would consider.
Correction, I
all
meant
or
to say
nothing.
New Mexico, not Tennessee's.
That still leaves out a
That's still
significant
5
amount of-
ships that they consider equivalent modern wise. Which
Well,
that's basically they've got 1-to-1 with the QEs there.
then they roll.
Which, to be
then-
fair, they are not
Pennsylvania's
equivalent. The reason why the Pennsylvanias aren't considered as equivalent is
or the
just
Nevadas.
they're not quite the same thing. Nevada's definitely not.
I disagree. The Nevadas are.
Nevada's what's it called 10 guns is what puts them behind.
I
The
Yeah.
12 14s, yeah, that's on par. 10 14s,
They consider that they,
same equivalent.
from what I remember reading, they consider the Nevadas equivalent to the Iron Dukes.
that's
Yeah.
no.
And the Royal Navy by this point is trying to call the Iron Dukes legacy capital ships.
The Nevadas blow the Iron Dukes out of the water. In
How?
every, they have their armaments better laid out. They're better protected.
No, what do you mean its armament is better laid out?
They can bring more of their armament to bear on more bearings than the Iron Dukes can.
The Iron Dukes can get them on almost the same bearings.
Not with that midship
And
turret, they
also,
can't.
by the sheer fact that they are admittedly only half a knot slower, and again the fact that Oklahoma's still bloody using triple expansion,
That doesn't matter in this period.
it does matter.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. With force lubrication,
Triple,
triple
Yeah.
expansion engines can be maintained at the same speed for equivalent periods during battle.
during battle. That's a very key caveat there, Fleet. During battle does not mean cruising speed. That's
They-
why you go to turbine. So hang on.
No,
so you can
no.
get that.
Let
Hang
me
on.
finish.
So you can get that higher sustained cruising speed versus a VTE or multi-expansion.
Also, as I
Reciprocating
recall,
engine.
also correct me if I'm wrong, but as I'm pretty sure from everything I'm aware of, which is a reasonable chunk, turbines are more reliable as well in the long run for cruising.
It's
Dep-
also
I
capable
would
of
s-
higher speed of cruising.
Well, yeah, but Runa's
Yeah,
already
based on what I understand, it's going to depend on slightly how you define reliability. VTE parts are easier to make, but you're going to need more of them. So balance that how you will.
But functionally, no matter what we say, the Nevadas and the Iron Dukes are 6-1, half a dozen to the other. They're the same bracket. Both will kick the shit out of each other if you put them in a fight.
But again, going off
One's
what I
not
was saying,
protected from one's guns. One's not significantly faster than the other. One doesn't have significantly faster rates of fire.
Fair enough.
and also going back to what I was saying, so going off the Royal Navy, considering this, that the Americans have 5 modern capital ships. What's called? If we go off it, and I guess if we're going off the idea that, correction. How many Colorados are the US getting? Because if they go off, assuming that, I guess, ignore that. Going off the idea that they get 4 Colorados, that means the Royal Navy is looking at the US having 9 modern capital ships.
Get the Lexingtons.
I'm going off battleships here purely. So,
Okay.
versus the Royal Navy, which was potentially looking at over 13.
We've got 14 here apparently, so we've got 14 15-inch armed
So
battleships.
that's still, then going off that, that's still 14 versus 9.
And then you throw in the 3 15-inch armed battle cruisers, which is Hood.
But again, I'm just going purely off battleships because battle cruisers where things start getting unfair.
Yeah, that's gonna.
So the Royal Navy has not. Correction, the U.S. Navy has not caught up to the Royal Navy. They are still considered to the Royal Navy a second-tier power. They are a big second-tier power, and this is where the Royal Navy does accept we can no longer keep the 2-to-1 standard, because say if the U.S. allied with basically anyone else, then it's 1-on-1 effectively in terms of numbers of ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First,
so-
what concerns the Royal Navy about the Americans in this period isn't their fleet in reality, it's their fleet in capacity.
What could they do? Not what are they
Yeah,
doing?
what do they have the industry and the yard space and the ship buildable coast that they can develop rapidly to build the fleet?
The thing that I also think is worth bearing in mind here with the actual wording of the question is the fact that the United States Navy is not, given that the only 2 powers left in a quantitative race at this point, post-war, is at least at this point
French and Italians.
No, I said quantitative.
Yeah,
not
That's
qualitative.
the French and the Italian. The US and the US and the Brits are not in a quantitative race. They're still in qualitative.
The
The
French
only
are
ones actually competing numbers-wise is the French and the Italians.
they're not.
And they're crying.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
No, they're not. They're really not. They're in a
Because what, you've
qualitative
got the
race.
Britangs and the Andrea Doria, is it?
Yeah, that's-
Ships are going to be the ones that
But-
class that Leonardo da Vinci's a part of.
You've then also got the idea that the French want to build 8 new battleships. The Italians are looking at 4 much faster battleships.
Yes, these are all. It's all part
But
of a
the-
qualitative race. They're all fighting.
No, it's
No.
Are
it's-
you seriously calling the Normandies part of a qualitative naval race?
Yes, I absolutely am. Leon's as well, and the Francisco Carachuelos especially.
No.
I mean,
no.
yes. I mean, Doctor.
Especially if
I
we
mean,
include the
I mean,
Leons.
look
The
at
Leons are not part of a qualitative race.
look at Dr. Clark's latest video on World War One. If it's held off, he makes it quite plain. It's a qualitative race so that all the powers are engaged in. The only quantitative race that was being fought at the time was between the Royal Navy and the German Navy. The rest was all
The-
qualitative.
And you kind of just defeated what you were just saying, because if they're the only ones doing it, then there's no one doing it after that.
Well, yeah,
You're the
exactly.
one who initially mentioned, but no, but you said there's only one nation's left doing it, but then there clearly isn't.
Well, no,
If-
that was in the run up to World War One. Post war, that is a very very limited run on a quantitative race, but it dies fairly quickly. Even
I
before
wouldn't have
Washington
said
comes
so.
up, it dies very quickly.
I wouldn't have said so. But
Yeah,
But-
the problem is relative to each other, the French and the Italians are always going to be trying to keep parity. in terms of hull numbers because they're fighting over the same patch of ocean. They both want control of the Med for different reasons, but they both want to have access / control of the Mediterranean. So they're always going to need to be in a parity race to have that capability.
Because the reason why I say that not in a qualitative race is, are you seriously comparing the Leons to the Francesco Caracolios?
Yes, I absolutely am. Well, the Francesco Caracuelos...
The Leons get bodied.
Not necessarily.
They have... The Francesco Caracolios have a 7-knot speed advantage.
Mm-hmm.
They have armor that resists the French guns because the French are still using the 13.4.
That 13.4 hits like a fucking brick shithouse. It's arguably
It's still a 13.4.
It doesn't matter.
It's a good 13.4, yes, but it's still a 13.4.
And there
it's struggling at this point. It's why the French solution is literally we strap more on because the French metallurgy couldn't keep up. It is a known fact that the issue the French were having in terms of bigger caliber guns was the French metallurgy for gun development just wasn't quite there yet. So the solution genuinely is we stick another turret on, another quad.
Well, yes, but that doesn't
versus
make it
the Francesco Caracoles, which has better guns, longer range guns, 7-knot speed advantage, a good quality armor belt.
You're not really in the period where it's like we saw. We're not in the period where you're looking at those guns' limitations being the sheer range of the guns. It's the fire control equipment that's going to determine the range those battles take place at. And in the aftermath of the First World War, given what the French have learned from that conflict and what the Italians have learned, both of them are looking towards roughly equivalent battle ranges. And I'm sorry,
no, they're not.
Okay.
But
No,
one ship is engaging with 16 barrels, which can absolutely hurt the other. The other is engaging with 8, which are going to hit much harder. But the arithmetic of naval engagement leans heavily in favor of the French hitting something that matters first before the Italians do. That being said,
the problem is that
I wasn't done.
Go on, play.
Go on, and then let Rune on.
That being said, naval battles are not a sure thing. It could be that the Italians develop a superior regime of gunnery to make up for that fact, and desire that they're going to be the ones to hit first no matter what, which then evens the odds. It could be that the French decide that they're going to increase their rate of fire. What I'm saying is, it's not a hard and fast rule that either one of these ships are going to dominate the other. They are close enough in capability that, should it come down to a shooting match, that it's too up in the air for me to decisively call.
Right, Runon, you say something before I.
Yes,
jump in.
I need to clarify something before you do things. Fleet, did you say that after World War I, it comes down to a gunnery fire control race?
No.
In terms of naval gunfire?
No, that's not what I said. What I said is that it's going to be fire control and doctrine that determine at what ranges these battles are fought, not the sheer range of the guns themselves. That's what I said directly. Not that they're going to be engaged in a race for fire control.
Okay. So, small problem with that theory.
Not a theory.
A 13.4. What we got? We got 13.4 versus
15.
a full 14 or a 14 and a half?
15.
To 15.
No,
Okay.
15.
At equivalent ranges, assuming equivalent muzzle velocity, a 15-inch shell is going to have a whole hell of a lot more muzzle energy, or not muzzle energy, and kinetic energy at that given range. Like, significantly more energy that it can put onto the target versus a 13.4. That means that the 15-inch gunship is going to have a longer effective firing range. And when you combine that with a ship that has a 7-knot speed advantage, means that it can stay outside of the 13.4's effective range while keeping its target inside a 15-inch effective range. That's just how ballistics work. That's how physics works. You can't overcome that with better fire control computers and more accurate fire control computers. You can't.
Also, looking at it, the Italian ships have a significant range advantage just off the board because the Leon and the Normandy have a maximum elevation of 15 degrees.
I will point out that this
which is 16.5 kilometers versus the Italians, which, going off their intended design, so best I can go off, has a maximum range of just shy of 20 kilometers. The Italians are able to open up first as well, so they will more than likely be able to narrow the range band down quicker as well, because they get that earlier period of fire. No offense, but a Francesco Caracolio, even depending on doctrine, unless the doctrine is the Francesco Caracolio charges in, guns blazing, I don't care, Leroy Jenkins.
Well, no, it's not going
into a Leon. A Leon reasonably does not have the capability to push an engagement. We say in general that a 3-knot speed advantage is decisive in terms of controlling battle ranges, on average. A 7-knot speed advantage, the enemy might not as well not show up because it cannot, unless the opponent chooses to charge, cannot choose any level of engagement.
It depends entirely. Yes, in theory, operational realities don't always line up with that in practice. It depends entirely on what both sides are looking to do in that engagement. If the French are moving something that the Italians have to attack, then the Italians are going to, because yes, they can open fire at that range, but the chance of them scoring meaningful hits is slim until they close the range down where fire can be returned. And whilst that isn't a guarantee of French success, it also does mean that the Italians have to close down. Now, I will admit, if the French are coming to the Italians can just nope out of there and say, nah, we're going. But if the Italians are guarding something that can't run, like a convoy or a fixed position, then they have to stand and fight.
The Italians can basically do donuts around the French, though.
That's not how naval battles work. That's just not how naval battles work.
Yeah, but you're also identifying how naval battles work. Because especially in the Age of Steam and Steel, very rarely is the defending convoy escorting force, especially when threatened by surface action, in close convoy with the force it's protecting. It's pulled off when it's put itself in between, usually at significant range. So you don't get valuable cargo shot at.
Yeah. You have the far escort force.
Yeah. And the issue is that the Andrea Doria can sit at... So Francesco Caracolio can sit at prolonged range and basically keep its hand on the Leon's forehead.
But again...
also...
Yeah, and if the Leon tries to go for the soft target, there's this window on average with how far long-range combat with how far, from historical examples, the surface escort groups get to engage them that's trying to do the raiding. You're looking at the Leon spending 3 to 4 hours where it can't effectively engage a capital ship trying to engage it, to deter it. It's a bad fight for the Leon. If it can't effectively engage its target, and its target can effectively engage it.
I mean, again, this is one of the things where I will point out that the Italians were more forward-thinking than the French when it comes to battle ranges. And I want to say the French would have increased the elevation of the ships they were building whilst under construction, especially with
No.
especially with
Can I just mention this really quickly?
Can I-
Because I am
well,
being
can I-
DM'd about it.
Can I finish my point? Like, you're probably going to shut it down, but I'd like to at least finish my sentence before I get shut down.
Let him go, Dragon.
If this is a world where World War One has happened, which we haven't got a question firm answer if it is or isn't, but even if it isn't, I'd argue that some of the conflicts navally that could have broken out would have shown the value of increased ranges of battle, and I don't think it's likely, especially not with how rapidly the French post-war, especially if World War I happens, and how rapidly they do this post-war, that the French would retain the angles of elevation that ships like the Britannias, the Lyons, the Normandies are built with. I mean, heck, even with the Lyons and Normandies, you're seeing them have raised their battle ranges from about 10 kilometers to 16. It's already happening.
No, it hasn't. So, this is why I was saying with the discussion. Yeah, and I know because me and RBG are currently discussing this because the interesting bit. So, at best, the French would upgrade them to the 18 degrees of elevation that the Bretons get in the early to mid 20s. Unless this is happening in late 20s, which is too far out of the range for this to really go off. That is only in late 20s does the Bretons get the 23 degrees of elevation, which also, I will say, we are not sure the quad turret could necessarily have the same level of elevation installed as the twin turrets do, because it is a relatively different type of turret design. So they might have limits on doing this. This does pop up in a few other different nations.
There is something I can actually say there, funnily enough. Because of the style of turret the French have gone for, it's two twins side by side. So,
the gun cradle's not what the problem is, though, Fleet. I see where you're coming from, and you're right, technically.
Oh, no. I wasn't going for the gun cradle. It's basically, given that they have arranged them in the same manner and almost spacing and availability of movement that their twin turrets have, albeit side by side, and given there is an empty gap between those two side by side turrets that is mostly armor and empty space, if they wanted to do it and they could do it with their twins, I can't see a realistic reason they couldn't with the quads.
I can, because you've now just compromised the structural integrity of the quad turret. In a twin turret, it's doable because that is the entire integrity of the turret, right? But now that you've introduced, but by increasing the elevation, you're technically reducing the integrity of the turret to a certain point, which is an acceptable loss with the twin. Now you've put those 4 points on a quad turret, it's much harder. Because again, you're right about the whole twin system. The idea is based off, basically, what if we stick two twin turrets together? But the turret's design is overall different enough, I would say, you can't reasonably give the same levels as easily. Because, again, these turrets are quite different overall in metallurgy design.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but aren't they also very flat turrets?
Yes.
And they're flat turrets with shallow turret baskets. So you'd have to redo most of the barbette. Because you need volume to depress the gun in two as well.
That's why I'm saying, I do believe they will get a elevation increase. It just depends on when and if they would be able to get the full level that the Bretons got. I could imagine them modifying them to the 18 degree. The 23 degree, possibly not. Because that requires a rather large redo of the internal structure.
And that would require a massive redo for the Bretons turrets.
It required some decent changes, yes, from what I'm reading.
But to get back to the actual question
And
and to
you're-
kind of finish it off,
Yeah.
I think we can agree that the US is more worried about the 17 15-inch armed capital ships, 3 of which are battle cruisers, than whatever Agincourt has turned out to be.
I'm not necessarily sure, actually, because I've been waiting for this one to come back. It depends on what Agincourt is. If Agincourt is the 28 knot, either 9 or 16, or it's not 16, and either 9 15s or 6 18s, the US actually probably is relatively concerned. Short term, right, I guess, right. To quantify this better, the US is more concerned in the short term of the 17, 15-inch armed ships. Because that's what the Royal Navy's got. So that's what they're concerned about now. But they will be very concerned of, why is their battle speed now 28 knots? Because if the Royal Navy has made this and they are looking now to move their battle line speed up to 28 knots, the standards are no longer acceptable. Because, again, that's 7 knot speed difference. And 9 15-inch guns going at 28 knots versus 12 14s going 21
talking, I'll be back in a
is
minute.
no longer comparable. The 16s, more reasonable. But still 21 knots is dangerous versus a 28 knot line. It's personally how I would see it.
And you get the whole issue of your enemy controls the bathysphere.
Yeah.
The US Navy doesn't have the ability the Royal Navy had in World War One of the Royal Navy's bottled up in a specific area that they've got to get through a choke point. The Atlantic seaboard is a very big place.
With a lot of sensitive targets right up on the ocean.
Now,
Yeah.
I will admit, this is going a little bit in speculative because I can't necessarily back it up enough, but if the Royal Navy has went with an Agincourt of 28 knots, and they are looking to make their battle line 28 knots, which would be implied by Agincourt's existence and potential follow-ons, that means that means N3 is different. N3 is probably still a brick going, come on, I can take whatever you shoot me at, but if the Royal Navy's now battle line speed is 28 knots, a 23 knot N3 is no longer acceptable. And that's when things start getting scary.
Because the N3 is not the issue.
G3s are also concerned.
Yeah, the
But go on.
G3 is more so, but it's the fact that the US has a very large area to defend. So does the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy having a between 5 to 7 knot speed advantage means that they can effectively maneuver and strike targets before the US Navy can respond.
Unless the US Navy is basically going, right, in every one of these spots, we're sticking a capital ship.
Yeah,
Which
and at that
isn't
point
really
you've got
feasible.
at that point you've got one force can concentrate, one force can't.
Yeah.
And that's defeat in detail.
Yep.
Which
And
the Royal
the
Navy
issue
would,
is,
assuming a conflict, the Royal Navy would love that.
Yeah. if the US Navy can't strategically keep up with the Royal Navy battle line, that frees up and the battleships can do the long range blockade duty and the surface blockade. That means you've freed up the battle cruisers into the cruiser force. And politely, I wouldn't want to see what an Omaha does against Renown or Hood.
Well, even saying the USN decide to
Or
be a
in
little bit,
Pennsylvania. not
even saying
Pennsylvania.
that what's called the
Portland.
Americans decide to be a little bit more aggressive and say form a squadron of their 4 Lexingtons, right?
Right?
4 Lexingtons versus a Royal Navy standard line of 28 plus whatever Royal Navy battle cruisers now are. Say you've got a squad. Say you've got 4 G3s coming along, and perhaps Renown, Hood, and Repulse as secondary. Oh boy,
Yeah.
That's going to be blood in the water.
Yeah,
And
you've
when
got the
you couple
issue of-
Go on, Renan.
and you couple that with the fact that U.S. Congress hates buying escorts, then you have no pickets.
It's the lack of the cruiser
So-
force that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Because even they say we're lucky we give them an early version of the Northamptons because they are a Hawkins equivalent. The US Navy cruiser force doesn't have a mass, and if it can't be backed up effectively by the US battle fleet because it's significantly slower than the Royal Navy's battle fleet, that's a very high theoretical rate of attrition for that cruiser force.
Right. Hello, I'm back. Please wrap up ongoing discussions. We need to move forwards.
Hi, back. I'm Runan.
Shut up. Shadowlord
We'll have
asks.
to call this backs boisterous
Stop.
battling.
It's just stop. Shadowlord asks, aside from the Shire, what part of Middle-earth would you like to live in if you were transported to Erda? I mean, anywhere the elves live.
Odds no.
The city of Minas Tirith.
We have very different ideas.
I don't know Middle Earth. I read the book. I read the books ages ago, and I haven't read them since I was like 13. Yes, I was the kind of kid who read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, basically back to back over the course of 2 weeks.
I don't know why you'd want to settle such pathetic realms.
Oh bugger!
There is only one true place you should go on Middle-earth.
Oh fuck! Here it comes.
Glory to Durin's realm.
Oh.
The Hall of the Dwarves is the best place for you to be.
Oh, I thought
Yes, Moria ends up falling, but
I-
there is plenty of other great dwarven halls.
I thought you were going to say
Mordor.
Mordor.
Erebor's the thing still during Lord of the
Well-
Rings.
No, Dowie for the win.
Yeah, it's like
Sure.
Moria before it falls. Like,
It's paradise on Earth,
it's
practically.
paradise. It's dark.
No, it's not even dark necessarily. It's only dark if you go to the areas that aren't lit by the various glowing crystals and dwarven contraptions. When you get sunlight, thousands of meters down because they've set up mirror systems for it. That's pretty cool. Go on, sorry, Foxo.
Well, Moria would be brilliant because the chunks of it that was dark. You wouldn't have to deal with things sunlight unless you wanted to.
Plenty of job opportunities.
Plenty of
Like, literally the best craftsman in the world, effectively.
We don't
No, no,
count
no.
Rings of Power as canon.
No. Like, give me, I will gladly go to Durin's realm over any pathetic Elgi.
Now, if it's in the time of the Lord of the Rings,
Remember the time?
so Moria's fallen, the realm of Durin's. Well, a great darkness dwells in Durin's halls.
There is still the other dwarven halls, though, that are pretty good.
Yes.
And we know that if it is during the time, what's his name? Gimli does lead the dwarves with the help of Durin the Eighth to reclaim Moria and start another golden age of the dwarves. And then he leaves to go off to the Elven realm.
Yeah, no, he gets muggles into the.
No, it's not even smuggled. From what I've read, he
Yes.
genuinely he's the only dwarf that was openly allowed in because,
He was invited.
yeah, he was the only dwarf ever invited, and the only dwarf that ever actually went there because the elves liked him.
Anyway,
Like,
Knight 681 asks, someone who apparently served in the East German Navy told me that after Hood's sinking, Icelandic pigmen had picked up more of Hood's crew who survived the sinking. If Icelandic pigmen had picked up more of Hood's crew as claimed, wouldn't they have reported it that they found out? I did ask for sources, I find it hard to believe. It's bullshit. It's utter
I can't believe
bullshit.
that for a moment.
It's utter bullshit. It's either someone spinning a yarn, or if it is true, it's the best kept secret in fucking Royal Navy history. Because the only way you keep that secret is you basically smother the people who were rescued with gag orders and threats of violence if they reveal that they were on HMS Hood.
And you make sure that their families can never know they survived either.
Yeah, which is just...
That ain't gonna fly in the UK.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's not true.
Sorry, I can't believe that. I think me and Flea are in total agreement. That is not possible.
Yeah. That's
And
it.
it's also the fact that when Hood went kaboom, 90% of the crew would have been dead from shock and the blast
Not even
wave.
that. A lot of them would be dead by just vaporization.
Yeah, in the battle by vaporization, in midships,
The shockwave would have just pulped them.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure the only ones who survived are basically those
were
who
on
like
stern.
No, because you've got one who managed to survive because he was in basically the crow's nest, and the blast wave literally threw him off the crow's nest up and into the water.
Ted Briggs, who was
actually
Ted Briggs, who was on the compass platform and who was shielded by the limited shock protection of the bridge.
like the only people who survived were out in the open at the time, and were basically blasted away.
Well, Ted Briggs wasn't. Ted Briggs actually made his way down through the bridge and then down the ladder to the deck level, but was met by the water when he was halfway down.
But so yeah, I think either way though, utter rubbish.
Yeah, complete utter rubbish. Dalcidius. When the Axis forces invade Greece in strength, what if Britain decides to mostly only commit to Crete and not the Greek mainland? Can they hold it? And if yes, what would Allied control Crete mean for the Allies in the Eastern Med? Also, how was Ex-Govan modernized to look like in the 30s, and how capable was she against the Soviet Black Sea Fleet? To answer the simpler question first, Govan, once modernized, looked very little like her old self. She gained a brand new bridge superstructure. She gained a completely new mostly new secondary battery setup. She basically became... She regained her former top speed through being reboiled and having her turbines not replaced, but basically fully life refreshed. And she gained a limited, but for the period, effective anti-aircraft suite. Oh, and she got significantly better fire control equipment and proper radios. She was, by any way you want to slice it, the most effective capital ship in the Black Sea. Now, admittedly, if she chose to stand and fight against the Ganguts in a one-on-one fight for some reason, given the upgrades the Russians had also given them, which in this case was Parisaya Communa, she probably wouldn't win that straight-up gunfight. But surrounded by the modern destroyers that Turkey had purchased in the 30s, the modern Turkish submarine fleet, and most importantly, a semi-modern Turkish Air Force, some of which is trained for work over the Black Sea, and given her superior speed, any fight not going her way she could just decline. And she does have the better fire control. She also has she also has something that Parisaya Commune does not. She's also one of the battle cruisers that we mentioned that was properly bulged. She has proper torpedo defense for the period, the 30s.
And secondly, I think this cuts into the heart of the point. Anything the Soviets have that serves that can catch her, which would be their light and their heavy cruisers, she demolishes.
Yeah. Especially the ones in the Black Sea.
Yeah. Oh, I do find some of the Soviet destroyers and light cruisers kind of cute.
But Yavuz is just, especially with her rebuild,
she's a battle cruiser. In the same way that a Prince Eugene wouldn't want to go against Dunkirk, something like a Kirov wouldn't want to... It's the Kirovs in this period, isn't it? With the
Oh no!
triple
Oh
and the
no no
twin
no!
turrets?
Oh no no no!
No,
The-
they weren't
the-
twins. They were just purely triples.
Yeah,
But no, but the
but they're
Kirovs
really
aren't in
small
the Black
triples.
Sea. The Kirovs
Nope.
aren't in the Black Sea. The only
I thought
quote
one of them was
Nope.
what?
no, the only quote unquote heavy cruiser in the Black Sea is Krasny Krim, with the 4 single 180s.
No, that ain't Krasny Krim.
That's Kravny Kapkaz, isn't it?
Sorry,
Krasny Krim mounted the Soviet 130s mounted on destroyers,
yeah, which I do like. I do like the.
and then
Yeah.
mounted Italian 100s that blocked her forward firing angles, which
Yeah.
is a choice.
Yeah, but even then, for the with the Kievs, I won't want to take a Kiev if they were built in the Black Sea at the point of conflict against Yavuz.
Just to double check, exactly when are we talking about this? Sorry.
This is basically
What-
this is her real rebuild, the one she actually.
No, as in
got.
what years, sort of. I just want to quickly double
It was
check
World War II.
something.
Oh, it
Because there was a Kirov in Black Sea.
doesn't matter. It's still.
In
gets,
particular, it is the Voroshev
it still
was
gets
in the Black Sea.
still gets bodied.
Yes, but I'm at least going to give the Soviets what they've got.
True.
Just because if it means more Soviet bodies in the water, but I'm at least going to be accurate for how dead they truly are.
Yeah.
I thought she was in the Black.
Also,
See?
there's a possibility of another one actually, off the top of my head. Because also RBG's also pointed out there might be a second, which is the Soviet cruiser Molotov might have been.
Yeah. Because I thought it was Molotov who was based out, who was done in Mariupol, wasn't she?
I'm just... Molotov was commissioned. Molotov was commissioned just before the invasion. Spent most of 1941 moving from port to port, using her air warning radar to support them, and she was used in the Black Sea. So, if it's 41, they've got 2 Kirovs,
Yeah.
which still isn't going to be good.
Okay. So, now for the big part of the question, which I'm probably going to have as the last question of the day, which is, if the Axis forces invade Greece in strength and Britain decides to only commit to Crete and not the Greek mainland, can they hold it? And if yes, what would Allied controlled Crete mean for the Allies of the Eastern Med? So there is a problem here. Everyone talks about the British intervention in Crete as being tactically and strategically unsound, which it was. But there was a very important reason why it was actually the correct thing to do. It sent a very clear signal to the various free nations and the Allied powers who were sitting on the fence that Britain would, at any opportunity, jump to the defense of anyone threatened by Axis aggression, no matter how hopeless it seemed. Which was a powerful signal to the free nations, given British setbacks in the Western Desert at this point. You take that away, especially at a point where Churchill's a little bit unstable in power in the UK at this point. I'm not sure what effect that would have on Allied cohesion. I mean, less British troops will die, to be sure, and holding Crete is a great advantage for the Allied powers, especially given its position in the Eastern Mediterranean. It does effectively bottle up the Axis forces in the Aegean. But I'm not sure if it's worth the loss of base and the soft power and cohesion factor it grants to the Allied powers, and also the signal it does send to one key fencer to the United States.
It depends is the answer. Because if they can hold Crete and aren't forced off it, then there is a significant difference of history. Because this
HMS
means
Manchester doesn't sink.
HMS Gloucester doesn't sink. HMS Fiji doesn't sink. Neither does Calcutta, but Calcutta's not as important. It also means that the destroyers Juno and Imperial are not lost. Herwood is not lost. So you lose a lot of good ships there in the Battle of Crete. So if that can be avoided, but worse, you suffer damage to Formidable, Warspite, Barham, Ajax, Dido, Orion, Perth, Rover, Kelvin, Nubian, and York.
Yes.
which was bad.
Yes, I'm not denying that, but the mistake. And the
And yeah, and honestly, what you do is then you put up Crete as a what's it called? Greek government in exile. That's what you set them up. If you can hold Crete.
It's not in exile. It's Greek territory. They're not in exile. They're still in
Yeah,
the fight.
but, yes, but you can argue it's in exile because
They don't have control of mainland.
you've been pushed out of Greek.
I
property.
would be.
This would be right. This would be like the United Kingdom losing all of mainland UK and being forced into Northern Ireland.
I would still consider that.
I
the
would
UK
consider that
proper...
in exile because you've been taken away from your seat of power.
I wouldn't. I consider that still the UK proper, in the same way the Greeks would consider Crete the UK proper. And
That's-
But pedantics aside,
Yeah.
also
if
you
you're
tell a Greek that
if you're in a
Crete-
better position to hold Crete and you don't lose to the paratroopers,
if they're even
you run into the issue of you've preserved quite the chunk of the Royal Navy's modern cruiser force. Because Gloucester and Manchester are quite the loss for the cruiser force.
You've also established a airfield that's much closer to Romania as well.
Well, I persist still about one going after Romania, but
And-
yeah.
Yeah, but not just that, you also have a fairly forward airfield to intercept any German aircraft trying to go sink things
Depending how you
in
do
the
it, you've
training
made,
as well.
made Malta 2.0.
yeah, and effectively you've not lost the blockade on the island of Rhodes, which the Italians are trying to use as an air base and a forward operating base. And with Crete, the Royal Navy can effectively blockade it. Because what you're going to do? Get past Crete to resupply Rhodes? And if you block off Rhodes, you reduce the effect of Italian submarines. So there's a lot to gain from not going into Greece.
And arguably, even the whole cohesion thing, if you're holding Crete and Greece is still screaming, we will reclaim the mainland, we will fight back, you've still got the same effectively allied thing of, we have come to the help, unfortunately, the mainland's fallen. But we will return. We will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the hit mountains, and we will reclaim their sovereignty.
I mean,
It's
I
arguably just as good a propaganda
I-
perspective of
not the prop
because what's better? We've went to them and got kicked in the teeth and now having to run away. Yes, we had tried to help them, but effectively we weren't able to stop them and kind of got overran as soon as the Germans turned up. Yes, we fought hard, but
it's a different.
pushback. Or do we go right? We have kept their bastion of the democracy alive. We are giving them assistance and we are giving them the capability to return.
Yeah.
And we have not suffered the same level of losses.
And secondly, think about it pretty
The-
quickly.
Yes.
If you don't see that the Royal Armoured, or the armoured units in North Africa, who do take Cyrenaica, being sent to Greece, you don't get, well, Rommel's campaign that pushes all the way to Tobruk is a lot less effective because he's not fighting second and third rate units. He's still fighting first rate, top of the line equipped armoured units that have already kicked in the Italians' teeth
Also, the Germans won't be
and
able
would
to send
go on
as
to
much
kick
assistance.
in historically.
The Germans probably wouldn't be able to send as much assistance because now they're having to be constantly worried about Crete as well. They can't afford to send as much air assistance as they would want to.
I mean, if there was a place to re-enter mainland Europe that you could use as a staging post for operations into Italy, even if you didn't intend to fully launch an advance into the rest of an area, it doesn't get much better than the Peloponnese Peninsula. You could, in theory, by landing a sizable British force with Greek help, kick the Axis out of the Peloponnese and basically hold it nearly indefinitely. If you have Crete.
Or it might be possible if you're willing to abandon Athens to hold Crete, to hold the Peloponnese to begin with.
That would,
Because it's a very narrow choke point for the Germans to get through.
and it's one of those things where it's not really a. Ironically enough, that could be. You could actually force them to use their their airborne troops there, and that could be the thing that bleeds them and means you don't get Crete. Like, they might take the Peloponnese, but they're just, the Fallschirmjägers are fucked. But yeah. Right, so, unless anyone has something else to add, that is Ramblings for this week. I'm enjoying having it back on Mondays, I must say. So, a few announcements quickly. I'm going to be running a new recorded show, because I know a lot of people do like, modern discussions. Which will be a recorded program featuring myself, Cyclix, and Phoenix, specifically aimed at modern geopolitics and modern procurement. Which will be a recorded show where I'll basically be gathering in modern topics and then fielding them. So look out for that in the near future. Trying to put that out on a Saturday. As kind of something to go up on the channel at the weekend. I've recorded, as I mentioned earlier, the first raw footage for the Lebanon Hoi 4 campaign. I need to deal with voice acting and editing, and also making some opening and closing sort of. I'm not sure if I want to do in-game footage with the in-character pieces over it, or want to try and make some sort of still background image from an artist, probably Soul, or if I want to try and make some sort of collage of period images and film instead. Any advice people want to have, anything they want to suggest, put it in general chatter or in the comments of the live stream once it's done. Any advice would be more than welcome. As per usual, couldn't do this show without Foxo and Dragon. Literally, those two are the things that bounce ideas off my little skull. And without the two of them, Ramblings simply would not be. So again, thank you to those two. Thank you to Moe, as always. Again, one of the moderators. Top man. Good stuff. And of course, Ruinon for handling all the ticking machinery and gubbins that I don't understand. That keeps the server and the chatbot and everything else running. Because I don't understand the numbers, they confuse me.
The monkey with the erector set is nodding in appreciation.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Wait, did you say the monkey with an extra set?
Oh no! Oh, now we know who sank HMS Sheffield. Now we know who sank HMS Sheffield.
I mean,
Yeah, it was an Argentinian football player with an extra set.
Whoa!
How they act.
Whoa!
I wish